Welcome to another Early Years Learning Hub podcast. My name is Jackie Ward and I'm the Managing Director and founder of the Early Years Learning Hub. And this podcast is part of our series titled Practice Sharing, where we talk with a range of teachers, educators and leaders about what they do and why they do it and how it supports children's learning. And this particular episode, we're going to be talking to Sue about some leadership and teamwork and all things, collaborative leadership and great places to work. I'm talking to Su Garrett, who is the director of the excellent rated service Explore and Develop at Annandale. And Sue and her team do some amazing things. This is the fourth in our series. We've talked about sustainability, technology and excursions. So I'm really interested to hear what Sue has to tell us about all things teamwork and leadership. So I might hand over to you, Sue, just to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your background and professional journey.
Sure. Thanks, Jackie. So as Jackie said, I'm the approved provider and director at Explore and Develop Annandale, and we're a long day care centre. We're part of a franchise group of services that's based in Sydney, Central Coast, Newcastle and Canberra, called Explore and Develop. And our service is 56 places, so it's fairly small for a long day care centre, and we've been open for 12 years. And yeah, we have, I just said 56 places, didn't I? So we're a little centre on a rooftop in urban Sydney. So, yeah.
Awesome. All right, so I know that you sort of reached out and suggested we talk about this topic, Sue, which I didn't even know that I wanted to talk about it until you mentioned it. But I really liked the way you sort of labelled it laddering teams, culture and leader development, because I love that idea that, you know, one of the things we need to think about as leaders in our spaces, how are we offering opportunities, scaffolded opportunities, I guess, for people to take responsibility, take ownership of work and all of those sorts of things, whether or not they end up in a leadership position or not. It helps to build their professional interest and enthusiasm and all those sorts of things. So, and I think it all contributes to creating a positive organisational culture, you know, which I think is so important. And I think I get a little sad sometimes these days when I read a lot of the social media posts and it sounds like people are not experiencing a positive organisational culture. So, and I know sometimes that's beyond an individual's control, but I guess there's lots of things that people could be doing in their space in terms of their personal responsibilities. So I'm really interested to hear a bit more about what you've got to say about any and all of these things.
I thought that was really interesting then, Jackie, when you said whether people are in leadership positions or not, because my response to that would be that everyone's a leader in some respect. And if you're not a positional leader, you are a leader, and whatever behaviour you are exhibiting in your service, people are following, whether it's good or bad. So I think it's really important that everybody feels empowered, you know, to have their voice heard in services. So I suppose for me, leadership is super important, and developing teams in a really positive workplace culture is super important. Like, without the teams, and I actually was doing some thinking earlier today about, you know, some of the research that I'm doing in my study, and at the crux of everything we do is children, and children deserve adults around them who are engaged and who are wanting to be connected to them and to each other and to their work. And so as leaders in this service, I think that, or in this sector, that's the most important job that we have, is to support these educators to be as engaged as they can be. And so it's finding things that people like to do in their job, and making their job as positive and as predictable and as empowering as possible. So there's different things that we do in our service. For example, we have quite a collaborative leadership structure. So I think, the sector was talking about distributed leadership for a while, and now the more the latest way of talking about leadership is talking about collaborative leadership, and this sort of backward and forward and everybody having a voice. So we've got positional leaders in our service, and we have a lot of them. For a service of 56 children, we have 5 small groups, and our teams work in teaching pairs. So there's where there's a leader and an educator who supports them, and that means that it gives everyone a lot more voice, and they can lot more opinions can be aired and shared, I think, which is really important. But there are also people who specialise in particular things. So in my service, obviously we have a sustainability leader, we have an outdoor teacher who is in charge of our sustainability program, but I've also got a teacher her strength is sewing, and so she is the one who, as the children say, she's in charge of the sewing machine, and it's her sewing machine, but we will all go to her for her skill around the sewing, and that's a big part of our program because we're always making and fixing things, so the children are always using the sewing machine. We've had different people that have strengths in arts, or have strengths in pedagogy with babies, or particular technology and working with children with technology. So it's about educators being able to showcase those, and they're the things that make them happy that they can actually do in their work.
I think you raise a lot of really interesting points there, and if I can jump back to you're talking about distributed versus collaborative leadership, and I think one of the things, I was in a policy role at the time when the updated learning frameworks were going through the process, and when it was proposed that there should be a principle around leadership, I was like, yes, because I couldn't agree more with you that everyone, I think, in this space is a leader. If you're a teacher and educator, you are a leader. You're a leader of children's learning. You're a leader of relationships. You're a leader of all sorts of different things. So it's nice to have that sort of guidance within our learning frameworks. And the other thing I think is that, I used to do deliver quite a lot of leadership training as in one of my roles as a professional support sort of, trainer kind of person. And the idea that people, distributed leadership, I think, was very misunderstood concept. The idea that it seemed like you just delegated a lot of tasks for people and then left them to do it, which of course, as we all know, doesn't work. What you're describing in your service sounds like, even how you just said with the team teaching, everyone likes to have someone that they can bounce ideas off, don't they? They like to have someone, they like to be supported to do the things that they love, and it sounds like you've got some really great scaffolds around people to find joy in their work because they're doing things that are projects that they're interested in, but also they're contributing to part of this bigger picture of your service, which sounds amazing.
Yeah. And I think, it's finding those strengths and encouraging educators to share them in their work. And, just art, for example, and drawing is not my strength. So it is not something that I would specifically do with children, but gardening and, sewing, they're things that I love and I'm passionate about. So they're the things, especially the gardening, like I'm often gardening with the children and talking to them about how and what we're doing. And that fills my cup. And I think we should be looking as leaders as what things we can do with educators to support them to fill their cup every day. Like, they have such a hard job. It's intense, you know. That I think
It's a really nice way of phrasing it, that you know, like, because one of the things that I guess that I see is missing from some of these posts that I read, and that I feel a little sad about stuff, is that I come to my job every day with a passion and enthusiasm, and I'm one of those people that's got too many interests, really.
yeah,
I could say the sewing, I could say the gardening, I could say cooking, I could say, you know, STEM stuff and all that kind of stuff. Too many things, but, you know, like, the idea is that I'm always excited to be doing lots of different things with children, whereas I think if you don't have that, it does become a bit more of a drudgery if you're not
yeah,
enthusiastic about bringing yourself into that space, and experiencing some professional fulfillment from sharing your knowledge and learning with the children.
yeah. And I think the other thing we can do as leaders is really absolutely take educators' voices and really listen to them and put their thoughts into practice. So, you know, when you are reviewing your philosophy, for example, well, the philosophy must come from the whole educator group. You know, it's
Yes.
not something that a leader just says, hey, this is our philosophy. You know, it goes everything from the creation of the philosophy through to, you know, how are we going to write a roster around who's changing nappies? Like, there's no point the leader making that roster. I can support them to do it, and I can ensure that it happens, and I should ensure that it happens so that those sort of tasks are fair. But everybody's perspectives should be asked for and respected. And if you can't implement something that someone has suggested, because you won't be able to do that for everybody, you should be able to say, thanks for that, but this is what works for the whole group, or I'm sorry, I can't make that work right now, but maybe next time, or this is why we can't. But you're actually valuing their voices, because often they know more than what we do about how or why something works, you know. And I
Yeah.
think, you know, there's some really good research around retention and you know, educator well-being being done at the moment. And, you know, autonomy is one of the really big things that keeps educators connected to the service, and especially teachers. And as leaders, being able to provide autonomy to teachers, to, you know, to trust them and know what they know what they're doing, and they know what they're trying to do. It's our role to kind of enable them to do their job and provide that scaffolding. We kind of say in our service that as the leaders, we create this structure that enables the educators to really focus on being with the children and do the things that they need to do with children. And so things that we would do is we create with the team flows of the day, of how the day is going to work, and systems and structures for those routine things that have to happen, like the nappy changes or the bathroom cleaning, all those kind of things, the lunch break times, and all those systematic things. We have them very set so that the teachers know what their tasks are through the day, and they know when them and their teaching partner have space to be with children. And sometimes people think that we might in our service, that we over plan some of those routine tasks. But my view is taking that out of the everyday decision making means that teachers have got more space to make the decisions that they should be making around children's learning and being with children.
I love that. I think that is so, it comes back to, you know, the episode where we were talking about social sustainability. If
Yes,
everyone doesn't
yes,
have to nut out these little details of the, you know, perfunctory things that you need to do
absolutely.
throughout your day, if you can
Yeah,
provide that flow and you can do that thinking for them, all of a sudden now people have got a lot more free space instead of
Absolutely.
worrying all day long, how am I going to fit all the things in that we need
Yeah.
to do? You know, so many things that we need to do in our day. So I
Yeah.
love that. What a
Yeah.
great taking the pressure off or alleviating the burden for your team, you know?
Yeah. And we do it together. So it's not me
Yeah.
saying, right, the 7:30 shift has to change the first nappies and then they have to be the person that serves afternoon tea. We do it together and we reflect on it through different times of the day, through the year as children change and the weather changes. But it's something that just sits there that even when you have a casual educator or a new educator come in, they are able to go, this is the shift responsibilities for this shift. I'll show you how to do them, but you know you're going to have the 10 o'clock nappies, because I just find that educators, they've got too many decisions to make in a day. So let's give them the ones that are important, like the working with children and the learning and the joyful things, and let's just take those mundane things
Off
out
the
of the
plate.
equation.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
I really do. I love it. And we talked a little bit about the idea that everyone's a leader. So, and you've talked a little bit about creating opportunities for leadership. How do you go about, I guess, because I'm sort of lamenting on the notion that a lot of people, you know, again, in these social media groups and conversations you have, people are thinking about career progression and all those sorts of things. So, I guess what's your sort of perspective on that idea of supporting people to learn how to be a positional leader as well as a regular leading person?
Um, One of the things that we've done over a long time in our service is to do like behaviour, personality behaviour test type things. And we've been fortunate, and I think we've privileged this in some of our professional development. And we've been fortunate to do paid tests with all of our educators, and we use these in appraisals, and we use them in team collaboration and for people to learn about each other and obviously the way that they work. There are free ones of these that you can do as well, so they're not, it shouldn't be cost prohibitive, but I think for people to learn about themselves is really important. And I think we spend a lot of time with professional development learning about children's behaviour, or you know, I think our staff meetings are always a professional development opportunity. They're never just a who put out the washing or who didn't clean up the kitchen. I think as a professional, I think we've passed that. We find other ways of doing those kind of, having those kind of messages passed on. So we plan our professional development across the year, use our appraisals to do both group and individual professional development for a cycle, a year or more. And part of that is always some leadership development. We're very lucky to have some strong leaders in our service, and so we can connect some of our emerging leaders with Explore and Develop and some of the other programs that they're doing around leadership development. But we've also got our leaders that we have in our service, and we specifically run some leadership training for our leaders. So
I love that you mentioned that. I don't know, did you call it personality or psychological?
yeah,
I can't remember, but I've done
we've
them as well.
we use DISC assessments specifically, but there are lots of different ones, and I don't want to make it that it's cost prohibitive to people, because it's not always.
Yes,
Yeah,
I think I've shared before some of the free ones, but
yeah,
the reason why I think that is quite a great notion is because I think it sort of diffuses and depersonalizes some
yes,
of the team dynamics, because
yes,
it's interesting and fun to talk about, well, I'm more of a this style and I respond better to this sort of
yeah,
thing. So people can advocate for themselves and their ways of working without it
yeah,
being, you know, narky or
yeah.
uncomfortable, you know?
Yeah, and it's really, it's there's exactly what you just said, that I've had people in teams, once we've done this, they go, I'll tell you, one person, for example, had amazing ideas, and they would come in and say, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this. And then at the end of the week, there'd be these half-done things there. And the rest of the team would go, oh, we're not touching that because that's their project and I'm just leaving that. Now, once we did these DISC assessments, what we realised about this person is that they are a lot more of an ideas person, and they really have the best intentions of finishing these ideas, but that doesn't always happen. And so they would, the rest of the team would feel let down. Whereas after we'd done these assessments, the team were like, well, that person was able to say, look, if I don't finish this, I'm not going to be offended if you come in and finish it or take it away. It's okay. I've moved on to something else, or I would love your help. And so that understanding, it took away that that sense of annoyance that other people had, that they never finished things or whatever. And it was really lovely revelation for the team.
It's interesting. The one that I was using it was called a character strengths virtues test, I think.
Oh,
And
yes. Is it the VIA one?
Yes,
No.
yeah, that's it.
Yes, I've used that too. It's great.
Yeah, so and that was a free one, I'm pretty sure. And
Yes, it is.
the time where I found it was super useful was I was doing some mentoring and I was paired with some people, and I got the mentee to do this character strengths virtue test, and then it gave me a better understanding of what that person's priorities were and the way they thought and the way they approached things. So it meant it revolutionized the way that I was working with them and supporting them, because instead of bringing my own character strengths virtues to the situation, I was able to work with theirs. And it was revolutionary in the way that, some of the things that I'd been trying to sort of, encourage that person just weren't sort of hitting the mark, because they were more my things than hers. So it was, it's a really interesting way to approach, I guess, our interactions with each other and our interpersonal relationships, definitely, as a team.
And I think, whenever we've done these types of things, people they really value that you want to get to know them and understand them for how they are. It's not about changing someone or trying to mold people to how you want them to be. It's accepting that we're all different. We all have different perspectives, but how are we going to work together, and what is an important perspective for you may not be for somebody else. So how do we, work together and support one another?
I couldn't agree more, and I think it scaffolds the team to become emotionally intelligent, because they're aware of people's responses and, again, not taking things personally, and better able to navigate our way forward and working together as a team.
Yeah.
Well, I think that is amazing, and I forgot all about that. That character strengths virtues work. And the idea of how helpful that was in my practice as a leader and for the people that I was working with. I feel also, like you've sort of described, it's a very enriching and rewarding process to go through, and it's important, I think, that, as you said, it's your professional development is more than just you learning about the things you do with children and for children and around their learning. It's also about yourself growing and developing as a person and as a capable, competent teacher, educator, leader, whatever you might be. I think that's really very interesting. I'm just having a little look at my notes here. Is there anything else you wanted to say on the topic?
I was just going to say, there's not that many other professions where you have to work so closely with so many people, with so many distractions around you. It's such a almost, I think if you talk about how productivity happens and how people work best, it's when they can get into flow and they feel that they're achieving things. As an early educator, that is that's impossible when you've got so many children around you and anything. So anything you can do to support people to understand each other and work together as a team will pay off in dividends, I think.
Yeah, and I love that you've mentioned the notion of flow as well. And I think you really notice that with children when children are in that sort of, and I forget the definition off the top of my head, but that sort of optimum zone of, the right level of challenge, not too many stresses, enough time to do
Yep.
things, all of that sort of stuff. And a lot of what you've been describing in this podcast and the others have really, I guess, been sort of helping to create a flow for children and for educators to be in their optimal zone, which I think again is something that is quite unique but very possible for people to achieve. And if anyone's interested, do a bit of reading on that, because it is
Yeah.
definitely something that's worthwhile, I guess striving for.
Just trying, yeah.
Yeah, around everyone's sort of well-being, and making your service a great place to work, and
Yeah.
making it a rich rewarding experience for everybody, children,
Yeah.
families, educators alike.
Definitely.
Awesome. Well, I think that wraps
Okay.
us up, Sue, and that's the end of our little
Great.
set in having a chat to you. And I've got to say, I've learnt so much, so I'm hoping our listeners will think the same thing. We weren't wanting to write down lots of notes and
Yeah.
lots of fabulous ideas. Thank you, thank you, thank you for
Oh, you're
taking your
welcome.
valuable time, and sharing all of your wonderful ideas and your expertise and your just general perspective, on everything. It's no surprise to me that you're a very well deserved recipient of the excellent rating. And thank you for sharing with
Thanks,
us.
Jackie. And we've got an Instagram account and a Facebook account with Explore and Develop. So if you want to reach out and ask me anything, please just do that via those social media. I'm happy to help.
That's great. Thank you, Sue. And
You're
thank you for
welcome.
listening to another Early Years Learning Hub podcast episode. Thanks. Bye.